Good morning, and thank you to the organizers for inviting me. I'm working with the organization which is small print marked in the upper left corner of my slides. It's the European Data Protection Supervisor, and that is, if you want it put that way, the privacy commissioner for the EU institutions themselves. So we are looking at the processing done in the Commission, in the Parliament, in the Council, and in the 60 or so agencies. And we are also an organization giving advice to the European institutions and bodies on all administrative and legislative measures that they do in the area of data protection, which, as you know, is in the Charter of Fundamental Rights of the European Union recognized as a fundamental right in two articles, in Article 7 on privacy and in Article 8 on data protection itself. I'm going to have been asked, and I've been going to say a few words on the general context and relationship between privacy and cybersecurity. So the first thing is that the privacy needs cybersecurity to work. And that's very clear. This in all data protection instruments at EU level and accordingly also in those at national level. It is that those who process personal data have to take appropriate technical and organizational security measures, taking account of the risk related to the processing and the cost of the measures and the state of the art. So a reasonable level of network and information security is required for the processing of personal data. And this is becoming more important, of course. The previous speaker as well explained the increasing amount of personal data that is being collected and processed. And according to that, of course, also the increasing economic value of those data collections that result from these operations. It's often said that the growth is kind of exponential, but I'm not even sure whether an exponential curve would be sufficient to express the explosion of data that we witness at this point in time. I'm going to speak at another conference this afternoon about the Internet of Things, and that's a development where even the distribution of devices is adding 2 or so powers of 10 per year or so, so where we have a growth which is incredible. We have all these mobile phones, and we have more and more devices which have a communication capability built in and are capable of exchanging data, and much of it can be related to an identifiable individual. Some people already have started to have data collecting devices built into their bodies, like connected pacemakers, for example, is a reality coming soon in the medical field. So we cannot imagine the size of these data collections and the value of the data. And of course, the more valuable the assets are, the more the motivation of attackers and the more sophisticated the means and the more resources at their disposal. So here the level of security measures and the strength of the security measures required will certainly be increasing. The legislative response in that context here at European level is of course a reform of the data protection regulation, which among other things also tries to make a more comprehensive and well-designed response on the security concerns. The other side of security and cybersecurity and privacy is that measures taken in order to ensure cybersecurity can themselves infringe on privacy. One approach is to collect as much data as possible and give it to law enforcement agencies or police and others in order to scan, analyze, filter, data mine it, so that the attackers or those charged or engaged in criminal activities can easily be identified. Where this is happening in the form of a normal police or law enforcement investigation, meaning based on suspicion under judicial control, that's of course the way it should be done. But there's more and more people suggesting that one should just collect masses of data and then identify those that might be unusual from this data collection, and then create the suspicion only after analyzing several million data records. So there's no evidence for that someone has been involved in any illegal activity, but he's just been behaving differently than 99% of everybody else, and so that makes the person suspicious. And of course, you all know that this is not exactly what a free society based on fundamental values would want to look like. And so here, my message is in that context, these investigations based on the data or for the purpose of cybersecurity or any other purpose must be based on our fundamental rights and strict limitation to ensure that these rights are preserved. My last substantial slide is not so much about the concrete measures that Jakob has presented and that we have discussed, but more the overall context. And it's maybe a warning that has been heard already, but still I think it must be made, and it also echoes to discussions which I had the opportunity to witness last year over in Washington, D.C., where the same concerns have been expressed. The communication by the Commission on cybersecurity had three authors. It was Mrs. Cruz, it was Mrs. Malmström, and it was Mrs. Ashton. So it was a joint communication of the Commission and the High Representative for the European External Action Service. And that means that it brings three domains together. Mrs. Cruz is representing the network and information security domain, that meaning that area where organizations like PayPal, like the Commission, like ourselves are and were organized in member states with the member state administrations, take all necessary measures and all conceivable measures to protect their processing against cyber attacks, against compromise from whoever. So making the networks and the processing centers more resilient, to make it more difficult to attack them. The second branch is the prosecution and investigation of the perpetrators, that is police work. There is a difference in the legal framework, of course. The police can obtain judicial orders, court orders, to get data which normally is not accessible to anyone. They can get banking data, they can get communications data under the control of the legal system, and so go into investigate matters much more deeply than the private entities and general administration could and should do in the first column. And then the third domain is what is called cyber defense, or maybe at the current political situation we have also seen activities of cyber war between Russia and Ukraine in the recent days. You may have heard news about some websites being changed by the wrong side and then taken as evidence to demonstrate plans that the other side is alleged to have, like turning a Ukrainian website and then writing on this Ukrainian website, we want to invade Russia or whatever, and then showing this on Russian television. That is still a very harmless thing, and there may be more intense things going on. And in the area of state conflict, military logic, of course, there's a completely different approach to dealing with these matters. I've tried to put it in the three little imperatives under the columns. The first one is protect yourself, the second one is investigate and prosecute, and the third one is defend and attack. And some people are concerned that when all three domains work together on a cybersecurity strategy, that some actors might take that as an opportunity to blur the lines between the three domains and use military logic in a private environment. So asking, I had one speaker saying, well, my customers asked when are they allowed to attack the attackers, and I think that is really a point where we would leave the rule of law and put in question our fundamental values. And I hope this all will help to make the discussion lively and interesting. Thank you very much.